Hey guys, how's it going? Welcome back to another episode of Catching-101 TV. I'm really excited for today's guest. It's a good friend of mine. A lot of you are going to recognize the name from CatcherCon a couple of years ago. Sammy Serrano. I met him coaching through USA Baseball. He's got a decorated baseball history from coaching, playing, and he's also got a unique perspective that we're going to see a little bit of today. He wears a parent hat as well. So he's got a couple of boys who play baseball, and we're going to get his ideas going through some of these processes as a parent. But Sammy, man, glad to have you. That was the very, very short intro. If you wouldn't mind, man, give us a little more details and give the people who are listening just an idea where you came from and kind of what you do and your path to how you got to where you are.
Well, Zan, I appreciate you having me. Again, it was great that I had a chance the opportunity to meet you years back and have had a blast, with our interactions and CatcherCon, et cetera. I was lucky. I played baseball at Stetson University down in DeLand, Florida, and was a two-time All-American down there and ended up getting drafted by the Giants in the second round. Was more of a hit first catcher when that was sort of taboo, and really learned after I got injured in pro ball how to become a better catcher and a better thrower. But at that point, it was too late. And then I got into coaching in college and at UNCG. Actually, I started back at Stetson for a year, then went to UNC Greensboro as a recruiting coordinator, and stepped out of that role because I had a family and got into high school coaching and did that for 12 years. And through that time, I worked at USA Baseball, obviously, where I met you, and have had the ability to really see some high-end players, but also some high-end coaches that really understand the game and understand where it's going. And it's given me a really unique perspective, like we're going to talk about today. Because I do have two boys. One, Eli, who you know very well, that is committed to play baseball at NC State going into his junior year next year. Obviously, we lost the sophomore year this year. And then Christian, 13, who loves baseball and is on a completely different path. So, hopefully I can give, some of the audience a perspective of what to do, what not to do, how to look at things. And again, it is unique to me because I did play professionally and coached. So some people might look at this and go, well, that's not going to work for us, but hopefully I can put it into words so they really understand how they can help their child the best.
Yeah. Well, and like I said, the reason I wanted to have you on for this episode is because, you do wear both those hats. You coach with an elite travel team, who's pumped out some amazing players as well, in kind of the age group where a lot of the viewers are confused by a lot of things going on. So I guess the first kind of topic that I want to speak with you about is, and again, I'm asking you to speak kind of as a parent, but also with your experience as a coach in mind as well. So right now, I would say the amateur baseball landscape is it's kind of crazy. I don't know if it's good, bad, or indifferent, but it's definitely kind of crazy. I mean, guys are playing, aside from this COVID situation we got right now, guys are playing like year round. Guys are playing tons of games. And I think it's really difficult for a lot of parents to navigate those waters, and maybe they feel like their player should take some time off, or they hear that, USA Baseball or Dr. Andrews recommends, a player should go X amount of weeks or months without throwing a baseball for their health. But as a coach, or I'm sorry, as a parent and a player, I know that if you feel like you're not on the field, a lot of times you feel like you're kind of missing out. Like, man, if I'm not playing in this fall league, somebody else is going to get seen and they're going to get recruited or scouted, and it might get skipped over. So why don't you just kind of tell me your thoughts about that initially, and just kind of how amateur baseball is right now, and then kind of maybe how parents, feel conflicted and not knowing what to do, and how you make the decisions you make.
So amateur baseball is, I wouldn't say completely out of control, but I would not say it's completely in control either.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we've been having discussions for my 14U team, for instance, with my coaching staff, because there's a big push to, hey, The state of Virginia opens up on June 10th. We'll be able to play in tournaments then. Well, the reality is, if we are looking out, you said arm health, that's a huge issue. One that you and I never really thought about when we were playing,
Right.
because we just played, because we didn't have the volume of games these youngsters have. People think you can just jump on the field and your guys will be ready to get on the mound and everything will be fine. Well, that's not the case. I've seen people push the envelope, especially, as low as young as 10U, playing 60 games a season. And to me, I've always thought of it as you got to practice twice as many times as you play. And that's me, as a coach. As a parent, I think of it as, okay, do I want my kid taking in a test, 4 tests a week when they've only been to 2 classes?
Mm-hmm.
Like, that just doesn't make sense to me. And look, I have a very different take on this, because, and this whole fear of missing out thing, it's a real thing. It's a real thing. And I'll tell you why. When Eli was going into his freshman fall, and we made the decision to, as a family, and it was driven by Eli, to have him not play in the fall and really focus on eating and getting bigger, faster, stronger. There was part of me that was like, oh man, how is this going to be perceived? And then that went away like 5 days after we made the decision. And that's from a guy that played and supposedly is supposed to have the answers to all this stuff. I felt it also, but we also knew that we were making the best decision for Eli at that time, because what if you don't have anything to showcase, why are you worried about showcasing it?
Mm-hmm.
If you can't run faster than somebody, if you can't throw a ball harder than somebody, if you're getting a bat knocked out of your hand, why are you playing? At some point there's got to be skill development. At some point you've got to allow your body to naturally get stronger, to heal, and that's a process. And it's not a process that can really truly happen over 2.5 months of an off season, like some people think, especially when they continue to go to lessons and do arm care and things of this nature. Like, I think that we need to take a big step back from the amateur baseball world and follow some of the regulations. We follow it. We follow the pitch count rules, whether the tournament mandates it or not for my 13U team, just because I don't care what happens at 13U. I don't care what happens at 14U. I care what happens to them in their career when they get to high school, to see if they want to play collegiately or professionally. That's just the reality of it. Do I have a different mindset? Yeah, because there's a lot of trophy chasers out there. And that's the coach hat coming out. But I've also assembled a great parent group that understands that I'm looking out for the best interest of their child from a parent coach perspective. And that's really hard, because like, people in Virginia think that people in Florida, California, and Texas, they're always playing nonstop. So that's who we're competing against. No, you're not competing against them unless you're looking to get drafted. Mm-hmm. That. I know that.
Yeah.
Most kids from a collegiate level are going to go regionally, and you're going to face those kids in travel ball from 12U on up. You're going to see those kids. If you're on a good team, you're going to know who they are. It was just like AAU basketball back in the day. You knew who the good guys were in Richmond, Virginia, in the Beach, in Raleigh, North Carolina, because you played against them. And that's who you're really competing against. But if it's not apples to apples, then there's no real competition.
Yeah, I agree, man. And there's you hit on a lot of things, which we need to kind of come back full circle and talk about a lot of those, but a lot of good stuff in there. One of the things you said, and I've used the analogy for a long time, like there's no need going to a piano recital if you're not going to take piano lessons. There's no need to go to a showcase if you don't have sufficient skills to showcase. And I speak to a lot of parents, and they tell me, yeah, we've sent my kid to this camp, this camp, this camp, this camp. and they're all showcases, and I'm like, well, try to get
Right.
him some development, try to, get him with somebody who can improve him, or, get him in the right facility or program, or whatever it is. But I think a lot of the mindset now is I need to showcase my skills, when the majority of people probably need to refocus on developing their skills to prepare them, to showcase.
Right.
So really good point there. And the next kind of thing I wanted to talk about was, you made a great comment. You said we as a family made the decision, for Eli not to play the fall of his freshman year. And that's something that I think is important, but I think it's tricky for a lot of people. For a child who
Yeah.
is, 13, 14, 15 years old, I'm not sure they always necessarily have the most awareness of what is best for them and their long-term development. So did you get any, was it Eli's idea, or was it your idea? Did you approach Eli? Kind of, how did that dynamic take place where you as a family decided that, hey, I think it would be best for you not to play the 30 games this fall, but to get in the weight room, to eat right, to get with your arm care guys, to go through your throwing program and just build, physically?
Um, it was a joint decision. The reality was, I coach in the Canes program. Everyone nationally knows who the Canes are. I've been blessed to know Jeff Petty since I was recruiting at UNCG. He was one of the first teams I ever recruited, and he's the president and CEO of it. Dan Gitson who is the GM, was Eli's national team coach at the 14U level, and he just said, "Look, he's going to be a good player, but if he doesn't do X, Y, and Z, he's only going to pitch." And I know that's not what Eli wants to do. And I said, "I agree with you. I understand that." Because we were very realistic parents. Zan, you know that my wife played Division I college basketball. Her brother was a shortstop in the Red Sox organization. So when we talk about perspective, we're probably harsh,
Mm-hmm.
but we're realistic. And we had that conversation with Eli. I said, "Look, what do you want to do?" He said, "Well, I want to hit, Dad." And I said, "I know you want to hit, and I think you can hit." And that was the day that I realized that, hey, I'm going to bet on my kid. This is the plan that we're going to put in place. I'm going to bet on him, and we're going to see where it shakes out, good, bad, or indifferent. And I think when we did our intake with you, he was 6'2", 144. You know, and when he started realizing, well, first of all, the first 2 weeks that we talked about, with him eating, that was just it's a chore. But we always went back to, hey, this is the decision we made. We've got to stick to the plan. If we stick to the plan, we'll see the result, the outcome that you want to see. And the fear of missing out thing, again, Eli would say, well, this guy did this weekend. I could be in Florida with the national team. And we're like, hey, man, you're not. You're not. So let's just focus on what's here. And Xana, to go so far as to, he doesn't want to play fall ball again. I mean, it's almost like it's a time away from him, so that it's gotten so crazy across the landscape of having to play that these kids can't be kids. And, I know you've seen it. I've seen it, where these kids have played so much travel ball and so much showcase ball that by the time they get to their freshman year of college, they're spent. And part of it in Cheryl and our brain was, hey, this will give him a little bit of a respite, allow him to recoup, build some other characteristics in him that will be favorable for him down the road from a work ethic standpoint and some of those things. So the baseball part was just a byproduct of him busting his tail, and it worked out for him so far.
Yeah. And it's it seems like he's had a great response to it. It seems like, I mean, I've just watched him physically develop. I mean, we can talk about that a little bit later. You talked about him starting at 144 pounds or whatever it was. But one thing I really want to touch on, along those same lines, which you were just talking about, in the fear of missing out, is, before we started recording, we were talking about, where you and I grew up and that sort of stuff. And I said I went to a small high school. I graduated with 48 people. It was not a very popular decision 20 years ago or 23 years ago, whenever I decided, hey, I'm going to focus on baseball. I love basketball. I want to play basketball, but really I'm a 5'10" white guy who can't shoot, but we needed
Yeah,
athletes. We just, at a small school, if you're somewhat athletic, you're pretty much expected to play everything. So when I,
correct.
so it was not a very popular decision when I said, hey, I'm not going to play basketball anymore. And I would imagine how that's amplified now because of the social media, because of just the rise of what, high school baseball and amateur baseball and travel baseball has become. Did he feel like, was he scared or nervous at all from approaching his coaches and saying, I'm not going to play this fall, or was he comfortable doing that, or how did that dynamic kind of work?
No, they were great. And honestly, Dan Gitson, we had a very candid conversation. Eli was a part of it. And he said, look, I think you can do this. And this is what you need to get there. And so they encourage it. I mean, that's one of the things that I've learned about the Canes as an organization. If they think you need something to be a better player, they tell you,
Mm-hmm.
and they don't hold a grudge if you don't play. Um, and for me, that's one of the best parts about it is they encouraged him to do it. They checked in on him. They checked in on him through me. Just say, hey, how's he doing? This is what we see for him next summer. How do you think it's working? And that was perfect because again, you do have that coach. So like, well, no, you have to do X, Y, and Z, or else you won't be a part of this organization or a part of this team. And that's just not what they did.
Mm-hmm. And that's kind of where I was going. I think maybe for other parents who are listening to this, I think it's a good time to, kind of take an audit of, the organization you're in or the program you're in. Are they really supportive of your long-term goals? Which for Eli, it's playing college
Correct.
baseball and being able to be a hitter in college baseball. So I know there's probably a lot of parents who are listening and thinking, man, if we told our coaches that we want to, focus on the physical development side and not play, I can imagine they wouldn't be too happy. So I would think that's just there are programs out there, and I know the Canes do a great job, but there are programs out there that definitely have the player's development in mind. They care about the player, they care about the family, and they want to help them, achieve their goals, whether that means playing this fall or not.
Right. Right. And look, this is a different. So obviously, with COVID, this is going to be a very different year in general. For instance, Eli had 2 scrimmages this year, and that was it. Didn't even get to a regular season game. Um, Part of development is playing and finding that right number of games, innings on the mound, at bats, whatever it might be for you. Um, so I don't know how this summer is going to look. I know right now we have tournaments scheduled for him, um, but it might dip into his fall. And luckily for me, as we look, or luckily for us, as we look at it, he's been lifting and eating pretty regularly since the season was canceled.
Mm-hmm.
So the strength gains are still there. He's holding it like 185 because we monitor it, or he monitors it, and so it's almost like a sliding scale. Like, okay, if you've been able to do this and we can maintain as you play a little bit deeper into the year, then you can still get to the goal of being 205 like you want to be going into your junior year, or 210, whatever that might be.
Mm-hmm.
But as a collective unit, you have to be able to monitor all those things so that you don't get short-sighted on, okay, well, he has to get 40 games in, or he's got to get 50 games in, because to me, it doesn't make a big difference.
Yeah. I agree. And I'll be honest, the reason that I wanted to kind of have this conversation with you what was because of your background as a parent and a coach and your perspective. But I've been asked so much since the whole, COVID shutdown in the middle of March, I guess, is coach, what should our players be doing during shutdown? And it's kind of a tricky question for me to answer because I think there's a couple of different responses. And this is what I've said on a few different podcasts. I think some players need to take a self-examination, or do I need to spend this time treating it like an off season where I'm developing physically, or do I need to stay ready to play? So if you're an unsigned senior and you're trying to play college baseball, maybe you're treating this COVID situation a little bit differently than a 13, 14, 15-year-old who still has time to develop. I think most people would probably be better off treating it like an off season where they're really trying to improve their body composition and their weight and strength and size and all that sort of stuff. But there are a handful of guys in particular situations that would probably need to keep their arm in great shape, ready to jump back on the field as soon as they open up so they can get seen. But I think that's mostly for the older guys who haven't signed yet, or they are coming back from an injury last year or whatnot. So I'm glad you brought up this COVID situation, because while what's going on with COVID right now is it's new and it's current, really everybody kind of makes the same decision every single year. What am I going to do with this window
Absolutely.
that I'm not playing? And so it happened that it was kind of forced upon everybody this year, but every single year, each player and each family needs to make a similar decision on, what they should do with their body and their player.
Agree. And so it's interesting you say that, because I have two different scenarios in my house right now. Because my youngest son looks at Eli and seeing what he's done and how he's lifted and how he's eaten in the past. And so now he's getting into it, and we have a fully functional garage gym that's slash hitting area
Yeah.
slash plyo wall, all the tricks of a coach that I could figure out in that space. But for Eli, we came up with this date of, okay, so June 10th is the day that the state is supposed to reopen. If you are supposed to play, we know what your ramp up date should be for pitching. All right. So we backtracked and we said, okay, so we have this amount of time. We know where you would have been in your workout at 90 days out. So let's give you a week of ramp up from a lifting standpoint, and let's get back into training. Mm-hmm. All right. And then it tapers back down as we get closer to getting back on the field. And so the volume, his percentages, everything, we had it already, and we just restarted it. Mm-hmm. So that's been good for him. And with the throwing programs and everything else. So at the end of the day, it was really simple to do it. Now for Christian, it was different, because, for him, it's more, let's just get overall body strength. All right. And realize that we don't know when we're playing. So I've got to keep you more limber, not getting super sore, and keep you on a throwing program, doing mm-hmm. some running stuff, etc. So, it is a fine line, and that's where my coaching hat and a little bit more experience does help. But as a parent, you should have your kids doing stuff. This is, to me, and you'll probably agree, this is more like pro ball than anything else.
Absolutely.
You got to figure out what your structure is for the day, get your things done, and go from there.
Yeah. For me, just listening to you, the key takeaway is have a plan and stick to it. I think a lot of people are just kind of, we'll wait and see what happens. We'll see what happens. And if you just kind of wait around, well, games are going to be start playing, June 10th or whatever it is, and you're not going to be ready. I know they've been talking about,
right.
On
Absolutely.
ESPN lately, the start date for the big leaguers. And I think they're almost going to have like a second spring training where those guys, as valuable as those guys are, they can't be having guys pulling hamstrings left and right just by
Nope.
starting to play. So it's important to have that plan.
Yeah, and I think Scott Boris even has tailored a plan where he said that they should have an extended like 50-day spring training,
Mm-hmm.
because he's really shown his worth, in my opinion, on some of his proposals and some of his thought processes, because guys are, again, like I go back to my 13U team and the travel teams that are around my area that are just chomping at the bit to get back on the field. Like, guys, these kids haven't been practicing. They haven't been in PE class
Yeah.
running around.
Yeah. That's a good point.
You know, I mean, they've been sitting around all day, probably playing PlayStation. You know, and
Or sleeping all
not
day
to
and
be
playing
like a,
PlayStation all night.
yeah, or just grinding all night like it was college or something. You know, like trying to, like, for us, it was like NCAA basketball tournaments. Like
Yeah.
they're on Fortnite and MLB The Show or whatever it is, just playing. So, which sometimes I'd like to be doing, but I can't do that anymore. But we have to take an audit, like you said, of what we're doing and how we're facilitating this the right way. Not just, look, we all want to be back on the field. That's the reality. That's where we all feel comfortable, back out on the field playing.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know,
Yeah.
we do it the smart way.
Yeah, good points. So, and again, I know we're kind of circling back around another couple of topics, but I do want to go back and focus on, so last year y'all made the decision that, hey, Eli, he needs to, he needs to not play. He needs to work on his physical development, get bigger, faster, stronger, all those type things. For another parent that's in the same situation as maybe you are, and they look at their child, and maybe it's a long, lanky kid that has plenty of room to grow into, or maybe it's somebody who hit a huge growth spurt, whatever the situation is, if they make that decision and say, you know what, I think it would be best for him, if he wants to be a college athlete, he needs to prepare physically, he needs to get better. What would you recommend kind of goes into the off season? Because again, I know Eli is a good player, was a good player. I'm not saying the only decision that he's not playing college baseball because of the one decision to take a fall off. He's done a lot of things leading up to that led to that opportunity. But once you decide that we are going to do this, we're going to commit, we're going to jump in the deep end with our physical, physical qualities. What are some of the things that you think would help other parents who are making that same decision?
Once you make that decision, I think that you have to sort of put yourself in a bubble from information, meaning baseball information.
Mm-hmm.
Asking, I'm not saying you can't ask other families how their son is doing, how the team is doing, anything like that, but you have to be very firm in your belief that you're doing this for the right reason and you're trying to help your kid achieve whatever goal it might be. All right. So if they want to gain 10 pounds, okay, well, how are we going to take these X amount of months and they're going to gain 10 good pounds?
Mm-hmm.
So that's the one thing, because I've seen people jockey in their mind just when I have the conversation with them of, oh my God, well, how is this going to be perceived? You can't worry about the judgment, because that's not your family. Your son, your family is your family.
Yeah.
And don't worry about the others that are out there that might be saying, oh, well, I can't believe that Eli took off. Well, it is what it is. We made the decision. You don't have to like the decision, from a community standpoint. And hopefully in hindsight, after the months of working out, you'll see the fruits of their labor, right?
Yeah.
So that's one thing. Two, understand that it is not easy. From the meal prep to making sure that they're staying on track with everything that they're doing, because there is a structure piece to this that is, a very mature part of their daily life. Having a 15-year-old work out the way that that is right to train properly, that's a difficult process to get going. And there, believe me, you and I had days where we didn't want to lift in college and in pro ball. And there are definitely days that a high schooler doesn't want to lift.
Mm-hmm.
So,
I had one
having
yesterday.
that nut, yeah, right. I mean, I thought about it this morning. I was going to hop on and do cardio for 25 minutes. I was like, okay, I got to do X, Y, and Z before I hop on with Dan. How am I going to get all this stuff done? And we have those days.
Yeah.
Um, but in their mind, why am I not playing with my friends? I could be doing something different. Why am I not just chilling? It's hard.
Mm-hmm.
So understand that there are going to be some ups and downs when it comes to that part of the process. And realize that buying food is not cheap. Uh,
Yeah.
you know,
That's a good
it's
point,
not
man.
cheap, and you've got to learn different ways to skin a cat, for sure. For instance, Eli loves chicken, doesn't like ground beef. That kills me because I love ground beef. I think it's a great alternative um, when we go into our different meal preps. So you're probably gonna understand about a month into it what their diet what they truly like, and what can truly help them not get burned out. Because Eli got burned out this winter.
Yeah.
He had a goal and he just got burned out from eating, and it took a toll on him. And you've done this so many times with getting prepped for competitions and bulking. And I mean, I've talked to you before. You're like, man, I'm having to crush food. I don't want to crush food right now. But you do it for the outcome,
Yeah.
for
Yeah,
the results.
that's a good point, man. Because there's a lot of times it's not fun. I know for me personally, I just sent out a tweet a little while ago. In January, I was 234.8. That was the heaviest I've ever been, and I had intentionally gotten that heavy. It wasn't like I was just drinking beer and eating DiGiorno's every night. I was crushing chicken and potatoes and ground beef and oatmeal and eggs, and it was hard. I mean, it was very hard work. Um, I heard a saying, I can't remember who said it a while, it was some bodybuilder, but he said, if you want to be a bodybuilder, you better learn about 8 different ways to make chicken and rice. And to what you're saying, it's easy to get burned out on the same thing over and over and over. So that's a good, lesson as a parent or, a player who's listening to this. And if you're trying to put on weight, I mean, let's be honest. You don't put on the good weight by going to McDonald's 3 times a day. You do it by eating the foods that you know are good foods. You do it by eating a lot of them, by eating often, and by working your tail off. So you need to know how to
Right.
make your chicken, whether it's with hot sauce or with lemon pepper spice or using a jasmine rice.
Yeah.
There's different things you can do. Um, to kind of change things up. But man, I love the comments you made. You said it's not easy. I think a lot of people, expect that, oh, we're not playing, we're taking an off season. This is the time to, back off, when really that's when you're putting the pedal down to the metal, and that's when you're hitting it hard. Was that
Absolutely.
eye opening for him at all? Did he realize what was going into that kind of before he started, or was that like, holy cow, like I didn't realize I had to eat this much and I have to work like this? And
Um, the work part was not hard. The eating was difficult. It was a bear for the first 2 or 3 weeks, and then so this is another part of it that just popped into my brain. You you have to know that your child is going to eat the same thing, and people are going to look at him weird every day at the lunch table. And I'm serious. They're like, "Are you guys eating the same thing again, or is it a variation, or what's the deal here?" Um, and he's like, "Yeah, I'm trying to gain weight. This is what I'm doing." And they're like, "That doesn't even look good." He's like, "It's fine. It's great." you know. Um, so people are going to look at being, they're going to judge you. You're going to judge your son for wanting to do what's right for him. And some of these were Division I athletes. They're like, I can't believe he's doing that. And I talked to them like, "Dude, what do you think you're going to do when you go to school?
Yeah.
Like, you're going to go to training table.
Yeah.
Like, what do you not
What
understand
do you
about
think's
this?
going to
It's going
happen?
to be regimented."
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm just doing it. I'm doing it a little bit sooner.
Yeah. That's funny, man. I like that perspective. And it's funny you said that because that's one thing I was going to ask you about. So after kind of going through this process and having an understanding of, what it takes to improve physically, how do you think that's going to help prepare him for college when he's out of the house and he's on his own and he's in the dorm, renting an apartment, and having to cook his own meals and having to, take more responsibility? Um, just since he's in your house right now, I'd love to hear what your thoughts. I've got an idea what you think, but how do you think that's going to help prepare him for college?
I think he understands exactly what it's going to take for his frame to keep weight on and to gain weight. I do think that he definitely will have a much greater understanding of what to cook and what not to cook
Mm-hmm.
and how to prepare food. Because he's seen us and we get him as involved as we can when we are trying to prepare meals and whether it's a different crock pot chicken for the day or whatever it might be. um, I think that'll help. Like I said, he's committed to NC State. I know they do a really good job with meals there. That was one of the things that we were like, wow, this has really changed from when I when I played in college.
Mm-hmm.
um, and when you look at a majority of the mid majors and the Power Five schools, that's one of the things that they've really taken into account is nutrition now, and how to adequately get their players nutrients. And so they're hitting their macros every day, and they're making sure that these guys aren't losing weight when they need to be bigger, faster, stronger, so that they can compete at the highest level. I think it'll prepare him that way. I think he understands that, you know, he's got to hit that 5 meal range at a minimum, whether that's a high calorie shake as a snack and a bagel. Some of those things I think he really understands now, where before this, not at all.
Yeah.
One of the coolest things for us, and like I said, he got burned out on meals for this year, for this off season. I mean, he held pretty steady then at like 175 through the summer, and that was a really big deal for him. Um, People thought that I was like super dad because I was on the road with him, and dude, I brought a crock pot, and we stayed an extended stay so that I could cook meals, and he ate them, and we brought them. You know, I'd give him. We would go out for 1 or 2 meals, maybe breakfast, and dinner. I had all the other meals prepped for him,
Yeah.
and he would eat them at the field.
I think that's awesome, and I appreciate you sharing that story because I think a lot of people who, want to set their children up for success, have the best intentions, but they maybe don't realize what an inconvenience it can be. And
Oh,
I
it's a
hate to,
commitment now.
yeah, I hate to put it that way, but it's very inconvenient having to eat the right food. Like, put it this way, I've got to take my wife's car to get an oil change on Wednesday, and like we don't have a dealership here in our, we live in a small town, so I've got to drive an hour. So I've got to pack like 4 meals with me just to go get the oil changed, and but for anybody, it is a commitment and it is inconvenient, and you're going to have to plan ahead.
Yeah,
And I think the parents' role in that is vastly, understated. They're the ones that are for the most part buying. I don't know of a high school athlete that goes to the grocery store, buys their food, prepares their food. It's the parents. So from buying the food to cooking it to having it ready to actually putting it in their lunch bag or cooler or whatever they have, it's a commitment on the parent side as well. Not just Eli understands he's got to eat, he's got to get his 6 meals in, but at the end of the day, like, who's cooking those 6 meals?
right, right. And I mean, one of the cool things is since we have been home, he's changed up his meals, and he's gotten. I mean, it's not the cheapest thing ever, but it is what it is. He loves French toast, so now he's getting up. He's cooking 4 pieces of French toast. He's cooking his eggs with it, and he's crushing it. Hey, good on you, buddy.
Yeah.
Good for you. Because that gets rid of some of the, okay, I'm just having scrambled eggs and some oatmeal this morning, or or whatever it is, it's adding some flair to it. He obviously likes it, and he's gaining some weight, from having a couple tweaks. And that's the other thing the parents gonna have to understand. You're gonna have to tweak it. You know, you can have all the macros in the world, but you've got to. It's like a Sudoku. You've got to figure out exactly what goes where so that they feel comfortable eating. They don't feel so full that they can't eat their next meal. And it's a lot.
Yeah.
I say it again, it's a lot. And but I will tell you this, because we jumped into this with Eli, it sort of streamlined how we eat it, how we ate as a family. I'll tell you, man, I didn't get the flu for the first time in a long time, and I'm a teacher, so I'm exposed to stuff. It completely revamped the way we ate as a family, from having sweet potatoes more often, to coming up with like 8 different ways to make sweet potatoes, that are just, I almost cussed, that are just awesome.
Yeah.
um, and it's really a healthy lifestyle. And people say diet, it's a lifestyle change. And I used to think that's the most cliche thing I ever heard, but I'm serious. From the type of milk we buy to, how you learn to bargain shop, everything. It's a commitment and it's a lifestyle for sure.
It's funny you say that because I've talked to a number of parents who've kind of done the same thing, and they've made the same comment that, man, we did it for our son, but it ended up changing how we ate and how we approach food, and if I'm cooking chicken for him, well, we're gonna eat chicken, we're gonna eat the same meals because he's not going to be on one meal plan and everybody else is on a different meal plan.
Absolutely.
That's not very it's not convenient. It's not going to happen. Everybody's eating the same thing. So I
Yeah.
think that's an important part. I know, you talk about him cooking, French toast or whatever in the morning. I think back to my college days, and I went to a junior college, and then I went to a 4-year school after that. So I lived in a dorm the first 2 years, and the only thing we could cook, we had a microwave, and I had a George Foreman that I snuck in, so we were
Yep.
pretty much eating out of the cafeteria. And then when I got, to Ole Miss, I had never really cooked for myself. Like I said, I was at home in high school. My mom cooked. In junior college, almost every meal is at the cafeteria, or occasionally you'd get something for a microwave. But then when I got to 4-year school, you're living off campus. You kind of have to learn how to cook. And at the time, I thought I was good at it, but looking back, like I was terrible. All I did was crush the weight gainer 1,300 shakes, and I ate all this stuff trying to gain weight, and I didn't do it the right way, and I got fat, and it was just there's a lot to learn, and I think that's an important part of it. That if you can teach kids who are going through this process, hey, this is how you do it. This is how you build the habits that are going to set you up for success. I think when they get to college, I think they're going to have a lot better opportunity.
And the habit part of it, is spot on. I think one of the books I think you read was Atomic Habits.
Mm-hmm.
I saw you tweet about that. I'm just jumping into that right now
It's really
because I
good.
think I think that from how we wake up in the morning to what our first response is, what our first task is, it sets us up for the day. And it's like make your bed.
Mm-hmm.
At the end of the day, if we can reconstruct the habits that we have to make them more efficient for our daily, just our daily structure, then it's monumental on what it can do on the back end, especially for a 17-year-old right now that in 2 years is going to be playing Division I college baseball, stepping onto a campus, against with guys that are 21, um, that have to compete for a job, you know. And I think I saw a response to a tweet by Mick Aoki. He was the head coach at Boston College, Notre Dame. I think the tweet was something like, what's the biggest thing for a high school player to understand going into college? And his response was classic, that the high school and showcase ball is not going to prepare you for what happens on September 1st.
Mm.
From from the morning lifts to study hall to class to practice to individual work, to weight training. Like it's it's not, you're not prepared because you have to understand in a mature mindset what tasks you have to do on a daily basis. And you think about going to a big football school, those kids are given meals that they have to eat. I saw a documentary, it might have been just a show on South Carolina's football program. And there was a young man that he picked up his prepared meals in the morning and had to come back with an empty like backpack with no food left in it,
Mm.
and gained like 25 pounds. I'm like, God, I wish I had that.
Yeah.
Like, and that's just, that wasn't what it was, man. It wasn't what it was. You trained how you trained, and that was it.
Yeah. And I'm with you. I wish as much stuff has changed. I wish we had access to things like that when I was playing. I do want to hit back on another thing you said, because I would imagine for a parent that's listening right now, they're thinking, holy cow, that sounds great. And it worked out for Sammy's kid, but we don't have we can't buy 6 meals a day. We can't do this and that. And like you talked about learning how to shop, economically and find different deals and cook things different ways. Do you have any tips for that? Because again, I kind of have things that I do. I mean, I always shop at Walmart. I don't go to the Whole Foods and this and that. But
All
I'm sure
right.
I'm sure along the way you've learned a couple of things that might be helpful or beneficial tips for somebody as a parent, and they just think their kid can't eat enough. Like it's like I'm feeding the kid the whole pantry every day.
So what we did is for vegetables, we stuck to broccoli and Brussels sprouts. Okay. And we found different ways to cook them to make them more appetizing. We buy sweet potatoes in bulk. I mean, just in bulk, because they're not very expensive at all. We buy rice in bulk. And then we found that he actually liked ground turkey better than ground beef. So, which around here is cheaper for us. And obviously, like what BJ's around here, they have a special they'll sell the round steak special,
Mm-hmm.
where they have like two roasts in it, like 6 round steaks, and then some round steak cubes for skewers, right?
Mm-hmm.
And when that comes up, we'll buy a couple of those. And chicken is obviously the worst. Um, you can We're picky about the chicken that we buy. So when we can get it, we'll buy it in bulk. But if not, that'll be like the weekly purchase that dings us the most.
Mm-hmm.
That and eggs. I mean, he'll go through eggs and milk like no one's business. Um, so you've got to try to hit the sales when you can, and freeze some of those goods. But whether it's roasting Brussels sprouts or you know adding some spices to broccoli, uh, you don't want to create this elaborate menu that is going to drive you crazy, and it's
Mm-hmm.
going to be so cost prohibitive that you can't do it after a month.
Yeah.
Um,
Those are some good tips. I'm with you, and I like your idea about broccoli and putting different spices on it. One thing that I really like is I love asparagus, but depending on the time of year, a bundle of asparagus is like $3 or 3.50, and that's like 2 servings for me. So I'll be honest, I don't really eat asparagus anymore. So you know, just because it gets old having to buy asparagus, spending why did I spend $12 on asparagus last week? So I don't do much of it. But you talk about things like
right,
rice, you can buy, I buy rice in like 20-pound bags, that
yeah,
lasts forever. It doesn't go bad. If I go by the ground beef section at Walmart and there's a yellow sticker out, which means it's, rollback, you better believe my freezer's getting filled up. So there are ways to do it
right.
that can help save you money. I do believe eating healthier is going to be more expensive than, going and eating off the dollar menu at a fast food joint. every day. That's how it works. But
And
what,
that's a sad commentary on our society, unfortunately.
yeah, that's just the way it is. I mean, it's one of those things
Yeah,
we got to learn to navigate through, and hopefully, some players get some takeaways from this, that it is a little more
yeah,
expensive, but it's much better for you. Like you said, and again, I'm not one of these guys that claims to have the cure for the flu, but you said this is the first year you've not had the flu. I mean, I think that could
yeah,
be related, that you've taken better care of your body over the past almost 2 years now, year
yeah.
and a half.
Right. But but let's also think about this. If you are consciously making the choice to not play fall ball, then take every bit of that money that you were going to spend on uniforms, on travel, and on team dues, and dump it directly into your training. That's a win-win.
Yeah.
You know, you're not robbing from Peter to pay Paul. It was money that you supposedly had already allocated for the fall, so just reallocate it to something different,
And I think that's how
knowing that a majority. Go ahead.
go ahead. Go ahead.
Knowing that um, you're using the same pool of money.
I think that's absolutely how you have to frame it in your mind, because if you just think, oh my gosh, my bills are going up here, but let's be honest, baseball is expensive.
Yeah,
If you're going to play 100 games a year, I'd say most players, maybe not all of them, but a lot of players probably go through more than one pair of spikes, especially if you're a pitcher. So that's an
yeah,
extra pair of spikes, extra pair of batting gloves, extra time, at the facility in the cage, or however the thing is structured. But playing sports is not inexpensive. Um, and the
no,
way that amateur, baseball and really all sports they're kind of shifted, they're a lot more like professional sports. A lot more amateur athletes now kind of have what I call a team built around them. They have a strength guy they go to. They have an arm care program they've purchased from somewhere. They have a nutritionist, or they have this, and they might see a chiropractor. You just have more things around it, and it's just because you're not spending it, like I said, on your uniform and your hat, and at the concession stand after games, or hotels on weekend tournaments. When you put that back into your body, I think there's huge benefits.
yeah, absolutely. And it's what you said earlier. Like, yeah, a lot of work went into Eli getting to where he was, and the strength part of it was huge for him. But I see plenty of kids out there, especially at the high school level, that they have a very sound skill set, and you can look at them and go, okay, if they were 10 or 15 pounds heavier, they could be a dude.
Mm-hmm.
Like the bat wouldn't be getting knocked out of their hand. That nice flat swing that's compact, it wouldn't be a little weak line drive into short center or short left center. That'd be a double in the gap. And I truly feel that if people were to look at it that way and say, okay, well, they have very sound throwing mechanics. Okay, well, those throwing mechanics are still going to be there because it's a movement pattern they already have, but that movement pattern is going to move quicker, faster, and stronger from 170 to 195.
Yeah.
That's a fact,
Mm-hmm.
right? Um, you're going to move the bat with more force if you gain 20 pounds or if you gain 10 pounds. Um, one of the things, it was a unintended consequence. Eli never really worked on sprints or running. I mean, he's 6'5" now, so for him, it just, he never really worked on it. He got clocked this year. He went from a 7'4" going into his freshman year. He ran a 6'9" flat and has never worked on running. But he's worked on front squats. He's worked on reverse lunges. He's worked on RDLs, deadlifts, um, and it's all contributed to him filling out in a way that his body is working better.
Yeah.
So, when I talk to people about this, and they have reservations, like they're going to miss out or their kid doesn't have an offer. Well, if a coach says, "Well, I got to see him more, and I've got to see him more," after like the fourth time they've seen him, then something is not jumping out off the page at them. Take the time to better yourself so something jumps off the page.
Yeah. And I would say you can kind of comment on this too, being a former college recruiter, the first test that every player, takes is the look test. When a coach or a recruiter walks on the field and they start watching a team, the first thing you notice is, how does this kid look? Does he look like he's starving, or does he look like this guy's thriving and he's going to be a beast, and and he's a monster?
Right.
So that's part of it, and that's just the reality. How you look does say a lot about you. Doesn't mean you're a great player, because you have, there's the guy that looks like Tarzan, plays like Jane. But for the most part, that is something that you're getting judged on. You're getting judged on your
Yeah,
physical appearance
absolutely.
and how you're projected. Um, you know, I got one more question kind of before we get off here. So we've talked about a lot of different things and a lot of different topics, and it's all been, very helpful, I think, for a lot of parents out there who are kind of navigating these waters. But let's say
Yeah.
someone does decide, hey, I think it's going to be best for my son to take time off. We're going to get him eating right. We're going to get him working out in the weight room. Where does the skill development fall, in that whole place relatively? I mean, while a player is, trying to get bigger and stronger and faster, how much do you think they should be throwing or swinging or still going to the cage for their work? Like, where does that kind of, fall into play?
I think it's all part of it. If you're taking the actual game aspect out of it, all right. So if we're going to take time to better ourselves physically, then what we need to do is we need to better ourselves, clean up our swing, clean up our arm path. You've got to figure out a way. Look, there's plenty of resources out there to get faster on your own, okay, without having a speed coach. You can look at K bands alone, and follow, their simple guidelines and their structure of their workouts. Put those in 2 days a week, on maybe if you're training on a 4-day block, on Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, you know, adding a speed day on Wednesday and Saturday to get your speed work in or your agility work in. Um, you know, for me, I let Eli take about 4 weeks off from hitting and throwing, because some of it is the hardwiring of their brain, right? That this is something that I'm used to doing. I'm just going to keep doing it. And oh, by the way, I'm getting stronger and I'm doing it. I didn't want that. I wanted him to reprogram his swing a little bit. And him and I talked about it, like, hey, this is what you need to do to be effective if you want to try to play varsity baseball as a freshman. Okay. You need to be able to get the barrel to the ball consistently. We need to take out some swing. Yeah, there needs to be some bat speed. I'm going to say it. There has to be some exit velocity, meaning you've got to hit the ball hard. People get so jammed up on this whole exit velocity thing. Newsflash: we all try to hit the ball hard. Now there's a metric that can quantify it for us.
Yeah.
Right? Come on.
Yeah.
Let's stop harping on exit velocity and launch angle. We already had it. For you and I, it was going to the field and trying to hit balls off the fence nonstop, or hitting home runs. All right, and not hitting worm burners. So, let's all understand and take a big deep breath. Big data is not trying to take over baseball and ruin the game for everybody. All right. So what we did is we said, okay, we're going to start by cleaning up your path to the ball. This is how we're going to do it. All right. And it was 3 days a week. You got to hit, you got to get your swings in. All right. If there's something else you want to work on, then you've got to add days. And then we said, okay, you're going to go do your throwing program. Since he doesn't listen to me, he went somewhere and he did a throwing program, and it was greatly beneficial for him. All right. So at the end of the day, he did his own thing, and that was it. And you have to continue to work if you are going to take the time off. If you're an infielder, if you're a middle infielder, you're going to have to do ground ball series. You're going to have to do flips. You're going to have to take ground balls. Um, and that's going to be the piece where, okay, you have your meals, you have school, you have your regular training, and then, hey, I've got to figure out what my baseball training is going to be. And for us, it was a really big calendar, a really big weekly calendar where we said, okay, how do you want to do this, Eli? Where do you want to fit this in? And hey, man, you got to follow it.
Yeah. Man, that's a ton of great info, and it's a topic that I like talking about because I feel like, there's so many parents out there that they want their best for their children, but they don't know exactly the right way to do it. Do we take time off? Do we play? Are we missing out? Like you said, the fear of missing out. I feel like that's the biggest part. But I talk to people literally all the time, and they're like, well, we feel like we're not going to get seen if we don't go to this event, or we're not going to, we're not, all the coaches are going to Jupiter. We've got to be in Jupiter. We got to get with the team that
Yeah,
goes there. And I think it's kind of sad where it's gotten, that, players think they have to play all the time. And don't get me wrong, I'm a fan of baseball. Like I'm ready for guys to start playing again. I'm ready to start watching games. I'm ready to start, just watching guys and spending the summer with players. But it's okay. I mean, I think in the grand scheme of things, it's okay if your child, takes some time off. And that's one of the things I get asked about at my camps, a lot, specifically when I talk about throwing. They say, well, how much time should, we throw? What should we do? And I say, well, I'm not a medical professional. Obviously, I read as much as I can about it. But all the medical professionals, the guys who are making a lot more money than me and they're doing scientific studies, they're saying you should take, 8 to 10 or 12 consecutive weeks off from throwing throughout the calendar year. And then parents are just like, that's impossible. You can't do that. Like we have fall ball, and then we have winter showcases, and then we have high school ball, and that rolls into summer ball, and then it continues over and over and over. And so it seems like the recommendations for a lot of people aren't reality. And I just feel like
right.
I feel like a lot of people can benefit from taking the approach that you did, or your family did. And maybe it's not right for every family. Maybe it's just not the right time for every family. But I think there are a lot
Right.
of families who can benefit from deciding that, you know what, it's okay that we don't get our 30 games in this fall, and we're going to devote, the time to invest in our family, put it in your words, and make them a better, better athlete.
It's interesting what you just said because I've seen, obviously, Butch Chafin
Mhm.
out of Tennessee, Adam Mosley in Hoover, Alabama. Like when you see some of these like high end high school coaches, they are implementing things that they're learning on a daily basis to their fall program, to their spring season. And I've talked to Adam a couple times, about what they do from a throwing program and drive line and some of those things and how they implement it. Look, these guys are really busting their tails on the high school end to make sure they're protecting their kids in the fall, making sure they're not overworking them and preparing them in the weight room and giving them all the things that they need. And that's huge because whether we talk about travel ball or not, when you get to high school, my high school coach was the most influential guy in my career at that point. You know, Jerry Williams, he was structured. He taught us how to work, and I was around him every day, and that impact, it's been with me forever. And if we can really understand that there are so many different moving parts that it it's just so important to understand the game piece and what toll it takes on you physically. Um, while you were talking, I was thinking to myself, I said, okay, so look, I played 60 games my junior year at Stetson. I got drafted. I played 42 more games, and then I went to instructional league for 6 weeks. All right. There's kids that play that many games right now, and they're 12.
Mm.
You know, Could you imagine catching all these games back when we played?
No. Mm-mm.
Because our coaches would have caught us every game, you know. And I remember playing in the Valley League after my freshman year and in the Cape after my sophomore year. And buddy, I was dead going back to Stetson playing fall ball.
Yeah.
And so then you look at, okay, so what is a standard minor league season? What, 142? So you went to spring training, you were there at spring training, you go play your 142. I think I caught my first year like 110 games, and then I went to instructional league again, and then I got invited to big league camp the next year. Like, that's when playing all these games matters, not 10, 11, 12, 13, 14.
Right.
It doesn't make sense. And we don't have enough data about what it's doing for their bodies and mentally. There's not enough. I don't think it's been researched enough at all. So, as a parent, you have to be able to pull the reins back and say, okay, I really believe that we've got to do what's in the best interest of our son or our daughter, and make sure that we're putting them first, not what our dreams or aspirations for them might be.
Yeah. Yeah, and you're right, man. That's a big piece of it. Like I said before, I think having success in almost every area has a lot to do with self-awareness. I think a lot of people lack self-awareness. I think particularly young athletes lack self-awareness, and that's not a knock on young athletes. But if you go to any high school, player, and you say, "Hey, where do you think you should bat in the lineup?" I should bat fourth. Like everybody thinks they're like the best hitter. They think they're the fast. I mean, that's just even in college. Like I remember one year we had a guy who his parent. This was an everyday starter. His dad like storms in the office and he's not happy with like where the guy's batting in the order. Is like this guy's about to break the school record for most number of games played, and you're unhappy. It's just there's a lack of self awareness in a lot of areas that
Right.
players need help with, and that's all this conversation is hopefully a way to give parents a different perspective and kind of see a different path than maybe what they're used to, or at least open their eyes to consider some different things. And like I said, what your
Yeah.
family has done is not right for everybody, or maybe it is right, but it's the wrong time. It's just hopefully we have a little bit more information and we can make a better decision about how to move forward and how to best prepare ourselves for the ultimate goal, which is being a starter in high school and then hopefully going to college. And
Yeah.
and if you can play beyond that,
Yeah.
it's fantastic. But I think a lot of the people who are watching this are their immediate short-term goal is I want to be a starter in high school. So
Right.
uh but man, that's a ton of great information, man. I definitely appreciate you coming on and kind of sharing the story of what your family has done and what they've gone through, because I do think a lot of people can benefit from that. So definitely appreciate that, man. Sammy, always have a
Appreciate
blast
you, buddy.
talking with you, man. So it was fun,
Absolutely, man.
and we got to do it again soon, man. Got to get back on here.
Let's do it, man.
All
I
right, man.
appreciate it, buddy.
Thanks, Sammy.
Good talk, man. Yeah,
You too,
absolutely.
man.